He was doing what so many of us do without thinking, just sitting outside after a long day, letting the last of the sunlight melt away the weight of the world. But on that porch, in that quiet moment, everything changed. Not because of anything he did, but simply because of who he was and the color of his skin. That's all it took. One glance, one call, one assumption, and suddenly, peace became danger. Eric had lived in that house for over a decade, raised his kids there, built memories there. The porch was more than wood and paint. It was part of his home, part of his peace. After work, he liked to come out, breathe in the evening air, and take a moment to just exist. No noise, no rush. Just him, his phone, a glass of tea, and the sound of his neighborhood settling down. Neighbors walking their dogs, kids riding bikes a few doors down. It was all routine, nothing unusual, nothing out of place. To anyone who actually knew the block, Eric was just Eric. That man with the calm smile, always helping shovel snow in winter or waving to the mailman. Just a neighbor. But to one person that night, he was something else. There's a man on a porch. He doesn't look like he belongs here. That's what the 911 dispatcher heard. Not a man in distress. Not someone breaking in, not someone causing harm, just a man, sitting, breathing. The caller didn't ask questions, didn't say hello, didn't check to see if Eric needed help. They just saw a black man in a hoodie and thought, that doesn't feel right. And that was all it took to put something irreversible into motion. The police response wasn't casual. There was no slowing down to assess the situation, no walking up with curiosity or concern. It was lights. It was shouting. The kind of arrival that makes your heart race before you even know what's happening. Stand up, let me see your hands. Eric was startled. Who wouldn't be? 1 second he was texting a friend. The next he had a flashlight in his face and a gun pointed toward his chest. His hands went up instinctively. I live here. This is my house, he said. His voice steady but clearly shaken. But it didn't seem to matter. There was no moment where anyone stepped back and asked, wait, what's really going on here? No one asked for ID, no one checked the address. It was as if the porch itself didn't matter, as if his words were invisible. They didn't see a homeowner. They didn't see a father. They didn't see a human being. They saw a threat, a problem to be controlled. The orders kept coming, louder and faster, escalating by the second. And Eric, still trying to stay calm, kept saying the same thing. This is my house. And then, just like that, before the truth could catch up, before logic could take hold, the taser fired. The sound was sharp, sudden, violent. His body jerked back, legs folding underneath him. He hit the steps hard. The glass he'd been holding shattered on the concrete. Inside the house, his kids screamed. His wife ran toward the door but was held back. And Eric lay there, eyes wide, body trembling, still trying to understand how quickly things had gone from stillness to chaos, from peace to pain, from being a man on his porch to being a suspect. All because someone made a call, and the system was already primed to believe the worst. Eric remembers the feeling even now, how the electricity surged through his muscles, how his arms locked up and his legs stopped listening. He hit the porch steps with the weight of a grown man and the helplessness of a child, his head bouncing off the wood with a dull thud. For a moment, the world narrowed into a tunnel of confusion and panic. He couldn't move, could barely breathe. The only thing louder than the ringing in his ears was the screaming coming from inside his house, his children crying out for their dad, their voices shrill with fear, pressing their faces against the window as they watched everything unfold. They had never seen their father like that. Powerless, shaking, splayed out on the ground like some kind of animal. And in that split second, something shifted in their world. Innocence cracked, safety evaporated. The officer stood over him, taser still in hand, shouting commands as if Eric hadn't just been electrocuted and dropped like a rag doll. Stop resisting! But Eric wasn't moving. He couldn't. His heart was pounding like a hammer and his body was still reeling from the shock. He tried to speak, but the words came out slow, slurred, like his own voice was struggling to find a way out of his throat. I told you, he mumbled. I live here. But the words, just like before, were swallowed by disbelief. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the officer's assumption that Eric didn't belong. Later, when he was finally sitting upright in the back of an ambulance, bruised and stunned, Eric asked the one question that had been spinning in his mind since the first flash of lights. Why me? He wasn't angry yet, just confused, raw, trying to piece together how something so normal had turned into something so violent. The officer didn't look him in the eye, just muttered, "You fit the description." That was it. No apology, no clarification, just those 4 words, as if they explained everything, as if they justified the pain, the fear, the humiliation. But Eric knew better. He knew what description really meant. It didn't come from any witness or official report. It came from a stereotype, an image rooted in centuries of fear, of suspicion, of dehumanization. That phrase, "fit the description," has become a catch-all excuse to turn everyday black lives into targets. At the station, they told him there were no charges, no warrants, no actual reason he'd been approached. But no one said the word mistake. No one admitted that the system had failed him, not just once, but at every level. From the caller who saw a black man and assumed danger, to the dispatcher who didn't ask enough questions, to the officer who showed up ready to attack before understanding anything. It was all so routine, so automatic, as if this kind of thing just happens, and is supposed to. Then came the call, the 911 recording, the audio that should have never led to any of this. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. 911, what's your emergency? And then the caller, yeah, there's this guy just sitting there, on a porch. I don't know if he's supposed to be there. That was it. No threat, no weapon, no shouting or breaking in. Just the idea that someone didn't look like they belonged. When asked what the man was doing, the caller hesitated, then said, "Nothing really. Just sitting there. But he looks suspicious." Suspicious. That one word carried enough weight to bring a squad car flying down the street, to pull a man from peace into trauma, to shake a family's sense of home to its core. The dispatcher didn't push back, didn't ask if the caller had seen the man before, if they knew whose house it was, if there was anything actually happening. That one word, suspicious, was all it took to set everything in motion. And now, as Eric listens to that call over and over, he hears something different each time. He hears the fear in the caller's voice, but not fear of danger, fear of difference, fear taught by a society that's been painting people like Eric as threats for generations. He hears the silence where questions should have been. He hears his own name buried under assumptions. And most of all, he hears the sound of a system that doesn't wait for facts. It reacts, it assumes, and far too often, it harms. What happened to Eric wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't some bizarre fluke or rare misunderstanding. It was part of a pattern so deep and so old that it often goes unnoticed by the people not directly affected by it. Eric's story is personal, painful, and specific, yes, but it's also part of a much larger, uglier truth. Because there have been too many Erics, too many black men and women who've been accused, harassed, detained, or worse, for simply existing in public spaces, for walking home, for jogging through a neighborhood, for waiting outside a store, for talking on the phone, for sitting on a park bench, for breathing. And this is the thing, it's not about whether you're innocent or guilty. It's not about what you're doing. It's about perception, about who gets the benefit of the doubt and who gets suspicion, about who gets a warning and who gets a weapon drawn. People who look like Eric are forced to live with an extra layer of caution, a constant awareness of how they're being seen, because being in the wrong place while black, even when it's your own home, can still be a danger. And when your very presence is treated like a threat, when the police see you as a suspect before they see you as a person, it changes how you live. You learn to carry yourself differently, speak more carefully, smile when you're afraid, de-escalate situations you didn't start, all to make someone else feel more comfortable in your existence. The worst part? Even when nothing physical happens, even when there's no arrest, no injury, the psychological toll remains. The hypervigilance, the stress, the knowledge that your safety isn't guaranteed, even in the most familiar places. that your home doesn't protect you from bias, that your skin, your presence, your stillness can be misread as danger at any moment. That reality becomes a weight you carry. Eric's children carry it now too. They used to play on that porch without a second thought. Now they glance over their shoulders when they hear a car slowing down. They ask their dad if the police are coming back. And they don't ask with curiosity, they ask with fear. But the system didn't see any of that. After everything happened, no one stepped forward with accountability. There was no apology from the officer who pulled the trigger on the taser. No formal acknowledgement from the department. Instead, there was silence. A press release that called it a misunderstanding. As if that word could undo the trauma. As if it explained why a man was tased in front of his family for sitting on his porch. There was no disciplinary action, no policy review, no admission of error, because to the system, this was handled by the book. That's what they said, and that's what makes it worse. Because when the book itself is broken, when the rules allow for this kind of violence to happen with no consequences, then following the book isn't good enough. When protocols protect officers from scrutiny more than they protect citizens from harm, something is deeply wrong. Eric was treated like a criminal and then dismissed like a footnote. Just another black man who got caught in the machinery of a system that was never built to see him fully, never built to hear his voice or hold his pain or honor his truth. No one came to check on his family afterward. No one offered therapy for his kids. No one even reached out to say, "We're sorry this happened." And maybe that's what cuts deepest. The way the world kept turning, unfazed. The way the silence from neighbors, officials, and even the media felt just as loud as the taser had. Because what happened on that porch wasn't just an event. It was an erasure. A message that said, "You don't matter enough for us to make this right." And Eric, sitting with that silence, understood something clearly. The people who hurt him would walk away unchanged, but he and his family would carry it forever. The porch hasn't felt the same since. It used to be a place of warmth, a kind of quiet sanctuary where Eric could unwind, where his kids would sit on the steps eating popsicles in the summer, where neighbors would wave hello and sometimes stop to chat about nothing in particular. But after that night, it became something else. The wood still creaks the same way. The breeze still moves through the trees. But there's a tension in the air now, an invisible weight. Eric doesn't sit out there much anymore, not because he's afraid of being hurt again, though that fear does linger, but because of what it represents now. What was once a space of rest and reflection became a crime scene without a crime, a place where trust was broken in front of his own children. And no matter how many days pass, that feeling hasn't fully gone away. His family tries to heal. They've tried to return to normal routines. But certain things stick. The sound of police sirens makes his youngest cover her ears. His son started having trouble sleeping, waking up in the middle of the night asking, "Is Dad okay?" These are the echoes of trauma that don't make it into reports or statements. These are the things no one ever apologizes for. And the neighbors? That's its own kind of pain. Some sent messages of support, quiet ones. A few came by with that look, half sympathy, half discomfort, like they didn't quite know what to say, or maybe didn't want to say the wrong thing. And some just said nothing. They pretended nothing happened, kept walking past the house without a nod, without a glance. But silence, in moments like this, doesn't feel neutral. It feels like permission. It feels like approval wrapped in indifference. Even so, Eric hasn't let bitterness take root. He's been through too much to give himself over to hate. But that doesn't mean he forgets. It means he remembers with purpose. He talks to his kids honestly about what happened, not to scare them, but to prepare them. He tells them what he wishes someone had told him, that the world may not always be fair, but your worth is never up for debate. That no one, not a caller, not a cop, not a system, gets to decide whether you belong. And that sometimes change starts by simply refusing to disappear. He started speaking out, joining local meetings, working with others who've been through similar things. He's not doing it to be a symbol. He's doing it because staying silent didn't protect him, so maybe by using his voice, he can protect someone else. There's power in refusing to be erased, in standing up even after you've been knocked down, in reclaiming the spaces where you were once made to feel small. The truth is, this isn't just Eric's story. It's the story of too many families across too many cities and towns, and it's time we stop acting like it's someone else's problem. We need to build communities that don't look away, communities where people speak up, even when it's uncomfortable, where neighbors look out for one another, not through the lens of suspicion, but with humanity, where police are trained to protect, not to assume, where systems are held accountable, and change isn't just talked about in press conferences, but lived out in real policies, real reforms, and real consequences. Because no one should have to prove they belong on their own front porch. No child should have to watch their parent be treated like a threat for simply sitting still. And no person should have to carry trauma just to survive a moment that never should have happened. This story could have ended in so many worse ways, and for too many people, it has. But Eric is still here, still standing, still fighting, not just for himself, but for everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. And that's why we share stories like this, not for shock, not for clicks, but to say, clearly and loudly, this is not okay, this cannot be normal, and we are not alone. If you're watching this and feeling something, anger, sadness, fear, frustration, don't push it away. Let it move you. Let it push you to listen more deeply, to speak more bravely, to show up in ways that matter. Because healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from truth, from action, from love. And it starts right here, with us, together, refusing to look away, refusing to let this happen again, refusing to let this be the end of the story.